So we'll come back in session. If you'd stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you'd remain standing for a moment of silence, please.
Take a moment of silence for the 11 police officers and 6 firefighters that died in the line of duty since our last board meeting, as well as astronaut John Glenn.
Thank you. All right, coming back from executive session, I would make a motion to have the chief proceed as discussed in executive session.
Second.
Second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Chief, do you have a? Nope, that was last month. Sorry, I was looking at last month's schedule. Okay, consent agenda. That would be for November 16, 2016, and 21, 2016 executive and special meeting minutes. I would move to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Public forum.
No one has requested to speak.
No one.
D, business organizational meeting of the new fire board. Okay, so we've officially welcomed our 2 new board members. And so per the rules of the board, every 2 years we need to elect a chairman and clerk. So I will open up the floor if anybody would like to discuss how we would like to approach this.
Well, I would like to make a nomination for chair. Would that? Is that?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So I nominate Ty Montgomery for chair, and I do this because Ty, I do believe, Ty, you bring a tremendous amount of skills, leadership skills to the board, and a good grasp of fiscal and legal matters, and also you have a steady hand.
I would second that nomination.
Thank you. I serve at the pleasure of the board. I'm honored and would be honored to continue. So I will recuse myself from voting, but I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now we need to nominate a clerk. Anyone like to?
I'll make the motion to nominate Corey Cooperman as clerk of this board. And again, based off of what I've seen in my involvement, I think she is held in high esteem by this board, and I certainly respect her and everything she's done for the board.
I would second that. Corey, you've been a great asset on the board and helping us over the last couple of years, and I look forward to continuing to serve with you.
Well, thank you. I accept those kind words, and would also accept the position if you so choose to vote that way.
Well, we'll call for the vote. So further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So the
Thank
board
you.
will remain in its current configuration. All right. Thank you all. Gabe, you're up.
All right, Mr. Chair.
Are you going to be as happy as that moment was today? Because, okay, all right.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, good.
For sure.
Bring us down.
Actually, as recognized, this is Gabe without the burly Movember scape that he had sported. And we're just trying to get something that wasn't in your packet. We're trying to get up on the screen here so we can save it. So give us a second here to.
All right, so, Mr. Chair, members of the board, while I'm pulling this up, you do have the November report in your packet. And starting for the month of November, you'll see that our tax levy revenue was at 2.4 million. We had projected 2 million for this time of the year. So again, we still are trending ahead of projections. One of the things we'll do is, again, reiterating to the board, kind of some of the things we're going to do as we go into the next budget season, is take a longer average of the cycles of our revenue and hopefully try to reduce some of these larger variances that we're seeing here. Non-levy revenue was at 152,723. Personnel expenses were under budget at 865,000, I apologize, 539. followed by vehicles and equipment at 45,709. Utilities and communications were at 24,175. Managerial at 79,424. And then in the past, I didn't have the capital and contingency line in there, and I thought that it was kind of valuable to include it in there, and it actually fit in the chart to actually not mess up the way the rest of the chart looked. So I did add that in capital and contingency. I spent 21,612 in the month of November. When we get to year to date, and I stepped away from my numbers because I'm trying to do too many things at once here. As you can see on our graphs there, we are ahead still overall for the year, year to date on our projected revenue. And let me just pull it up here. Okay, so total revenue year to date is at 7.8 million, which is 622,000 over budget. The predominant reason for that being related to our timing on our tax levy revenue, as well as obviously ambulance revenue has been another reason why we are trending ahead of our projections year to date. When it comes to expenses, if you can see, personnel currently year to date is trending under budget. And something that's kind of a little different between personnel and the rest of the expenses that are trending under budget. The one reason personnel is more of a timing on some of our benefit costs, but also on our other expenses we are trending under because of timing on tax revenue. So now that tax revenue is going in prior to really that large chunk of tax revenue coming in, we hold off on a lot of major purchases. And then as that revenue comes in, we start making those. So we will start to see as we continue through the fiscal year, us coming more in line with budget on our expenses. Currently at this point at the end of November, our total expenses were $5,963,915, which is under our budgeted amount by $639,000. So we are kind of trending ahead in a good fashion thus far. Percentage of expenses, our highest expense is personnel at 73%, followed by the capital and contingency at 15%, and then managerial and operations are both at 6% of our total expenses. Again, I put this in here so to continual reminder of where the majority of our money goes, and it is relying upon the personnel, and so small changes in our personnel expenses affect our budget on a much larger percentage, with it being such the largest percentage of our budget. And so that's important when we get to some of the discussion later this evening on some more news from PSPRS. I brought you a lot of great news last month on PSPRS, and I've got more good news, and that's a little sarcastic. So it's important that we recognize where our impacts are.
And Gabe, on that slide there, the reason that it's at 73%, the personnel is actually at a lower percent than it typically has been running because the capital got some funding in capital, so I take up a little bit of that pie.
Yes, correct. Because we had such a large capital expense at the first part of the year. As we get closer towards the end of the year, you'll see that personnel come up closer to almost 80%. So. And then finally, kind of cash position year over year. So given the fact that we do have some of these additional expenses coming up and things that we need to address in the future, when you do see the cash position year over year, you will see about a $1.2 million increase year over year. Some of that is from surplus and savings from last year, and some of that is also purely just a factor of timing on collection of the revenue, because we are so far ahead of where we've been historically, because that's what that budgeted number for revenue is based on, is historical projections. That's why we're also seeing that positive variance in cash year over year. As far as the liabilities and assets difference, again, there was a lot of due tos and due froms used in the past that weren't quite reconciled completely on the monthly basis and done at year end, and that's why we're seeing the variance in our assets and liabilities on a month by month comparison. So unless there's any other questions, that concludes my part of the financial report.
Gabe, I had one quick question
Yes.
for you. On your percentage of expenses year to date, at that 73% for the personnel, is that pretty much in line with other districts, other departments that perhaps you work with, or are we out of line with that?
You're out of line, but to the positive. Some are, a lot of districts and departments are in the 80 to 90%. Being closer to the 70 to 80% is a much better position to be in. It allows organizations to be able to absorb changes, impacts on the personnel line item because they don't have all of their budget already going to those dollars. Whereas there's organizations out there that I work with and those that I've seen that are in the 90 to 100% of levy, and then they have other non-levy revenue that cover some of their other expenses. But they're in a lot of trouble. Every small change in personnel costs has a major impact to their budget to where they struggle every year balancing their budget. So that's a good position to be in where Sedona's at.
Okay, so we're in a good spot.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then you saw me dancing around today, and it's because there's one little page missing out of your packet, but I wanted to give the board a quick update on the mayor fire billing. And so let me just pull this up real quick.
So Board, as he's setting that up, as you recall, more than a year ago, we began to investigate, actually, they went at it once and it didn't go, I believe, if I remember right, and then they got a re-request by mayor to do their ambulance billing, and we were able to put that together, I believe, the second time we tried. And so that was in September of 2015 that we began that service. And so I wanted to take a look at the projections we provided you as a board, saying, hey, if we do this, how will it impact our budget, what our expected revenues will be, and I wanted to see how close we were to making our mark before one of you asked me to give you this report. So we were ahead of the curve. So I asked Gabe to provide this for you, and then I'll explain what he found.
So looking at here, Chief's already kind of given the summary on my first two little paragraphs there at the beginning. But looking at the 2 bullet points, and if the computer will let me scroll down here in a minute, I'll show you a chart as well as that we developed. But we have a decent set of data from Mayor prior to us taking over, but it's not complete. And so there's some points of this data missing, and I'll kind of lay that out there. But there's a few things that we do want to point on and hit on. The piece we're missing is what that actual total impact or total benefit is to Mayor, but we will be able to see what the total benefit has been to Sedona Fire. So on that, the collection rate with MSN, which was the company that Mayor was originally with before engaging with Sedona Fire, from the period of September 2014 to August of 2015, they were collecting at 89.4%. And so essentially what that means is for every dollar they billed, they had statutory or they had settlements that they had to write off statutorily, access, Medicare settlements, insurance, contractual insurance adjustments, and then they came down, so that initial dollar that they billed, they may have had $5 of collectible, and of that $5 that's collectible, they collected 89.4%. I'm sorry, that 50 cents that's collectible, they had 89.4% that they actually collected of that amount. And that was based on, they had a 1.5 million in gross revenue. So of that 1.5 million, we're not saying they were able to collect almost 90% of that. What we are able to say is of the collectible amount of that 1.5 million, which is probably closer to about 750,000, just based on what I know from ambulance collection around the state, they were collecting the 90%, 89.4% of that number. Their rate that they were charged, or what MSN charged them for those collection services, was 8% of total collection. So for actual dollars collected, which was a total expense to Mayor Fire for that year of $62,609. Sedona Fire took over in September of 2015, and although September was a bit of a transition month, based on the data sets we had, that was our our most accurate 12-month comparison year over year for both billings, whether the MSN or Sedona. In that same period of time, they actually had 1.568 million in gross revenue, so a little bit higher in gross revenue. But as you can see from the report, our collection percentage was actually 91.1%. So it is about a 1.2% increase in collection, and that's kind of where the better data, or I should say a more complete data set would be nice, because then we could actually see what their true dollar collected per transport was and actually put an actual dollar amount to that. But without that data set, it's we're missing part of the equation. I don't know why this isn't. Let me scroll down to the rest of this. In addition, when you look at what we agreed to charge them versus what they were charged before, you'll see we agreed to a 6.5% collection charge if they switched over to EPCR, which they did. And in that same period of time, we billed them $50,560. So they did right off the bat, not only taking away any changes in the actual collection rate, they saved $12,000 by making that switch from the billing company they were with to Sedona, and also saw a slightly higher collection rate. And then finally, what that meant for Sedona, which, let me try to do this and see if this works. No, it's because I'm trying to read it off the flash drive. There we go. So as you can see, as far as what that means to Sedona, that bottom part of the chart is the enhancements for Sedona Fire. So before the agreement, our ambulance billing division between salaries and wages, supplies, software, was right at $130,723. Post the agreement, obviously there was a change from having a part-time biller to a full-time biller, and that cost of that division went up to $159,773. With the revenue we received from services were provided, we essentially decreased the cost of our ambulance operation by essentially $21,000. So although we brought in 50, we obviously, to bring in that 50 cost us roughly $30,000, but we still, essentially, with lack of a better word, in the for-profit world, the business world, we netted a profit of roughly $21,000 on that specific part of the operation. So what we've seen just in this first year, as we go further into this, we'll have much more data to be able to give even more insight into the benefits of the agreement. But I think what this has shown is going back to this shared services model and basically combining resources. We're able to take services that two separate organizations were utilizing, one in-house, one out-of-house, combine them and save for both organizations. I think that's really the value that comes out of this. So unless there's any questions on Mayor, that concludes my Mayor update.
So I'd like to just expound upon when we talked about this, Gabe and I did, I said, well, we're billing more, but took in just a little bit less, right? I'm looking for the numbers up there. But realize, as Gabe said, so Access and Medicare, they actually lowered the numbers that they were paying. So if they would have kept in their same model, the thoughts are that they would have actually collected less money because they were collecting at a lesser rate, 89% versus our 91%. So we got them more money, but because of that data set that's kind of missing to kind of go, hey, to make an apple-to-apple comparison. So we're pretty comfortable that they actually did receive more revenue than they would have received with us billing for them. And you see a reduction of $12,000 in fees that we know they saved that, and things like that. So we don't have I wish we could provide this to Mayor with, hey, look you made this much more and you saved this much in your bill, and look at how wonderful this is. I think we can present that to them, but it doesn't have the bow on top, if you will, that we wanted to have.
Right.
But because of the way the data was being reported, and there's just, I'm not sure it's valuable for us to do too much more work on this report. But it does, I hope, provide you the insight that we're providing more. And what we don't have on here as well is what Sedona Fire is getting done with having that additional full-time person. We didn't even calculate the value to Sedona Fire becoming more efficient in our billing as well. So we know we've netted a $21,000 revenue net, but I think we're also seeing the increased revenue that Gabe's been reporting on our EMS billing and efficiencies. And when someone before was on vacation, having another full-time person there, there's a lot of intangible benefit to our system that has to be the asterisk at the end of that number as well.
Chief,
So
are we in a position to do this for other districts or entities?
we've entertained other agencies that have questioned or looked into it. Certainly, we're open to that discussion if and when we've entertained that through some other people, and I think Camp Verde at one point approached us, and we looked at that, and they decided to stay with their vendor, and there's some other different things. So if someone came to us, we would entertain it, especially knowing a little bit about what we're doing now and how it really worked out, because this was an estimation. I think I was trying to find what we predicted we were going to bringing in revenue. I don't know if we ever really found that, but I think we were kind of in line with, it seemed to line up pretty close to what we had estimated it to be. So I'm happy with the report. Certainly open if someone came to our door, but we're pretty busy. That group is really busy, so it would, again, encourage, require us to maybe find another biller or a part-time biller, depending on how large the agency was. That creates space issues, that type of stuff. But the synergy's there. It's just a matter of if it would all come together well. Mayor's extremely happy with us. We get phone calls from them and their chief all the time about Chris Ahern and Amy and Hedman in our EMS billing division. They're very, very happy with our services and what we're doing for them and the follow-up we get on their needs and concerns. So it's been a really good relationship for everybody on that front as well, besides the net piece, which is important. But so, Patty, anything else on that you add from overseeing EMS billing that we missed on that report?
No, but I think the personnel aspect of the two folks, I know you mentioned, we were talking about Chris, but there's so much of a synergy between the two people is just at its peak, I think, because they brought, I think we reported, they brought down their overdue, past due down to 2 weeks, and they were sitting at 6 and 8 weeks out of date on the billings. And so what they've been able to accomplish and at profit for us is just huge. Comes down to the right people doing the right stuff in the right seats, so.
Yeah. So, excellent. Thank you. Gabe?
Thank you.
And the other item on the financial report is DHS status?
So this is included in your board packet, is the letter from Department of Health Services. They have received our application, and I just kind of reiterate again with the board, the process is, once we submit the application, they had 30 days to determine if it was administratively complete or not, and then it goes into the substantive review phase, which they have another 30 days to determine what questions they have for us. And then within that period of time, once they ask us the questions, we have to respond. And typically it's just more or less asking questions about the basis behind our numbers. And then after that, then they complete their analysis and we have a result of their findings. Again, from this point, I'd anticipate probably another 3 to 4 months before we come back to you with the findings from Department of Health Services on the overall application, and then approval. So I anticipate by late spring, at the latest, we'll hopefully have our new rates in place, but definitely well before the beginning of next fiscal year. So we'll keep you up to date on that, but at this point, we're waiting on kind of the next step from Department of Health Services. So.
Okay. Now we're gonna talk about the,
Or you want to talk about that now? Yeah, I think that's.
You want to talk about that now? Is that all together?
You want to go ahead and approve the.
yeah, we kind of moved on. We'll come back. We'll get that, we'll clean that up. So I'll make a motion to approve the November billing report as submitted, or finance report as submitted.
I'll
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll clean that up. Okay, now you're gonna,
I don't see it. Do I must have an old agenda?
No, just the PSPRs, I want to just give them an update.
Just part of my financial
Just part
report.
of the financial report. There's no action needed on this or anything like that, just more of an update as it relates to the findings that have occurred in the last 72 hours. If
So-
that's okay.
So we did get, the PSPRS reports came out last week, and then we did get the individual actuarial reports on Friday, and we had the group ones before then. But the numbers did not come out very favorably. For this current fiscal year, we are currently paying 24.56% towards our employees' PSPRS benefits. Pull up one thing here. And with the new rates that came out, and there are a few causes of the actuarial evaluation. Essentially, they look at a couple different factors. They look at how the plan's performed, how the funds have performed. They look at assumption changes, meaning either early retirements, medical retirements. They look at legislative changes that have occurred, which has impacted these, as well as they look at amortization table of the unfunded liability. And what's occurred this year is they changed the estimation for our for the earnings of the plan overall. They went from 7.83% year-over-year earnings to reduce it to 7.5. And then PSPRS reform that passed last year had the much more significant impact. And what that did, not only by creating a new tier of employees effective July 1, it also changed what the cost of living increases were going to be for people already in the plan. And by doing that, it increased our unfunded liability. And that there in turn brought our rate from what we had said to the 34.5%. Yeah. And the system as a whole is at 52% funded. And Sedona Fire
That's 52% is the rate, the
is
average.
the rate.
the
Oh, the
employer
average rate.
contribution
Okay.
rate is 52%. We're at 24.56. Well, this is actually going forward.
This is the full report.
Yeah.
Try to find ours. But this isn't connecting.
But now we're gonna be at 34 point.
Yeah.
Correct. So now we're going up to the 34.5%, which based on our projected payroll for 2018 is roughly $660,000 in increased PSPRS expenses from the current year. We had projected the number going up about 30,000. So we projected a $30,000 increase in PSPRS costs, and it's going to be another 630 on top of that. This is not a Sedona Fire issue. This is an issue of PSPRS across the state. Other districts, other large districts, Northwest is about a $1.7 million impact. When you look at some of the cities, city of Tucson between fire and police is about a $50 million impact. City of Phoenix, did I say Phoenix first? Tucson, yeah. Phoenix between fire and police is about $75 million impact. So this kind of blindsided a lot of people. I think the best thing we can do with this information is, as I said last month, is continue to address and work on in our budgeting process this year, looking at our unfunded liability, as well as obviously being able to absorb this. We're gonna have to look in a lot of different areas. My firm's gonna be doing some different analysis on ways of addressing the unfunded liability with not just going through tax rate increases, obviously, because when you look at what we're paying in comparison, our normal rate compared to our unfunded liability, the majority of this cost and this increase is in that unfunded liability portion.
So this is 17, 18, or 18, 19? This is next year or year after?
This is going to be next year. And, last month I had discussed the Hall decision with you guys. And I love the wording in the actuarial report, but they say it is likely to have a less than significant impact on the 18-19 contribution rates. And from what I'm talking to, I've worked with an actuarial, or actually a retired actuarial, that works with me on a lot of districts, and he kind of agrees that he doesn't think the Hall decision is going to have much impact. He's still digesting the numbers and looking through the numbers on these reports, so I'll be able to give you more information, hopefully next month on some of the reasons why. But ultimately, we're looking at a rather large dollar amount this coming budget cycle. So.
And is this going to be annual each
Yes.
year?
Well, so this is the first year the actuary put out projections for future years, and they actually show the plan to somewhat stabilize going forward with minimal 2 to 3 percentage point, I'm sorry, not even 3, 1 to 2 percentage point increases year over year after this year. So they're saying this is the big hit, and then it'll level off. But we've heard that we're not going to see significant increases in the past, and we've seen them. So
So Gabe, in terms of the two reasons they gave, which might have been abbreviated reasons, but one was because the investment for this last fiscal year came out so poor at 0.6%. And then the other, of course, was the proposition, the changes that the proposition brought forward, but they called them both short-term changes. So my question to you, yes, would be why would this amount then continue and go forward when they're doing this because of short-term situations? Obviously, they're going to make a better investment this fiscal year.
Right, so the funding piece, or the return on investment piece, was a minimal, was an impact, but it was a smaller percentage of the impact. Over the overall plan, it accounted for roughly 3% of the total impact.
Okay.
So, but the pension reform changes was all, I guess it's a short-term impact in the fact that now we're up at this level and then we don't see continued impact. But by changing those projected cost of living increases, that's going to carry through the life of those retirees now and people and participants currently in the plan.
Something I haven't noticed, when they've had good years, they haven't lowered our rate. So I'm curious as to why in a bad year they raise it. And is there anything we can do to object to that or protest that in any kind of formal way?
So the only thing that, to my knowledge, that we can bring forward to public safety on this is if there's errors in the underlying data set. So for example, I've got a client right now that there was a rather large jump in what the average wages are for the group. And we don't think that they may have received accurate data from public safety on the census information. So we can look at, was the information given accurately? But other than challenging their assumptions or their projections, no, there's no recourse for that on our end. So.
Question, and I don't know if this is for the chief or for you, Gabe, but when all this was going on last late winter, early spring, to try to convince the public that they needed to vote in favor of this proposition that changed the structure of the public safety personnel retirement system, did anyone project that this was going to happen at that time, or was everybody just caught by surprise with this?
So no, this was not presented to anybody, to my knowledge, that this was going to occur, and whether that there was misassumptions on behalf of the actuarials or anything like that, it's hard to speculate. I don't know, but to my knowledge, this was not some of the stuff that was projected that was going to come of the pension reform.
It just seems like it was such a big thing, and there was so much work done on it and so much negotiation going on about it, that it just seems to me like it's kind of hard to believe that this was missed.
Yes, I understand.
Would it make sense for us to file a review of their foundation for coming up with that percent?
So yeah, I'll look through as I continue to go through these actuarial reports, and not only have I read them, but actually look at the numbers and compare our data set to what they have. We'll see if there's any foundation for us to even make any kind of claims. So.
Well, unfortunately, here's the bottom line. We start budget planning next month, usually. We're going to start workshop next month?
This January, February, we're not sure yet.
Yeah,
February.
this point we'll probably start a little earlier because of this. I mean,
We've made an effort to keep the budget to no more than a 3 to 4% increase each year and be consistent.
That's our attempt, but I can't promise in this.
But I'm just saying, we've tried cost of living, inflation, that's kind of, we know it's gonna go up a little. We just lost that. That's 3.75% of our budget right there. So
That's with no increases and no
with
anywhere
no,
else.
if we don't do anything differently, our budget goes up almost 4% just with that. So we all are gonna need to be aware of that and think hard about how we can manage the budget this year.
Yeah, and and we looked at one of the assumptions in the actuarial is that the salaries, just the normal course of salaries, go up 4% of the budget for the PSPRS members. And so I wanted to check that assumption and base it upon, ground truth it for us. And based upon step raises and all the things that are programmed in our next budget, our firefighter salary line goes up like 5.3% So add that to your 3.75, not the full 5%, that's not all of our budget, but it's, you know, a $7 million number or whatever, so it's a fairly substantial number, so it's gonna be another percent or 1.5, I mean, so, yeah, we're already at a 5% growth in that without doing any, if nothing changes, status quo, we're already even up there, so this is a large curveball, miffed, I think is a word that I use as I read this from Thursday to Friday to Saturday to Sunday to Monday to Tuesday into Wednesday. It's just I've spent a lot of time trying to get my head around this, talking to my fellow other fire chiefs, what are their impacts going to be? You know, a 1.7 number for Northwest as a former fire chief at Northwest. That's a huge number. You know, the numbers you speak to the, you know, the large metros, which again for us, like, wow, I can't understand that number, but you can understand it's a really big number even for a large metro, you know. It's going to have people reeling to figure out how to do this, and we're going to be challenged in our budget process to connect the dots on this one, and we're going to work really hard to do everything we can. But I wanted to get this to you guys today so you understood this.
Just another question, and I'm not clear on this one. Did I hear you say that this big increase is a one-year situation, that it wouldn't happen in subsequent years?
I'll let Lisa-
Or did I hear that people aren't really sure?
That this was a new issue, so that's a hard thing to
It's-
predict.
This is a continuing cost.
Correct. This is good. Yes, yes. So, yeah, let me make that point that clear is we're jumping up, you know, roughly 10 percentage points, and we're going to stay up there. And then what they're projecting for the next, I believe it's a 10-year layout, is, you know, roughly that 1 to 2% increase year over year at this new high level.
Okay,
So,
and we have all the confidence in the world since they. you
right,
know,
exactly, exactly.
So we really don't know what's going to happen.
Correct. Correct.
So when you look at that, and we're clear on this, when we're saying 10, I mean, I was clear there, 24.56 to 34.5. That's a 40%, it's 10 percentage points, but the budget dollars is a 40% plus increase in our pension costs. That's what's happening across the board for everyone. So again, we're like everybody else, is gonna be felt across the 250 plus public safety entities in the state. And then take the aggregate of those numbers you just talked about, the large impact it's going to have, the ripple effect across the entire state. And that pie piece that's gonna just has to be on the plate, you have no choice in the matter. It's gonna be impactful on many, many levels. Nothing that we could have done, could have seen, could prevent. And then as we rise that up, our hope is that it plateaus there, and then we just kindly see that 1 or 2% increase and really appreciate that 1 or 2% increase going forward. But if I could be sarcastic, I'm not confident that that's really how it's gonna go, based upon the assumptions, the projections, the historical pieces, and we need to be preparing ourselves for potential surprises, and be less surprised. Because
Does this affect the employee contribution? Because usually they run about half of no, they're staying the same?
No, so actually, employees will, based on the Hall decision, will at some point see actually a decrease in their contribution by 4%.
Employees.
Employees, correct.
The employer has to make it up.
Well, so that 4% reduction, again, was not going to our individual plan. That was going to the overall plan. So where we're gonna see that makeup is in our unfunded liability. So we're not necessarily gonna see a dollar for, or a percentage point to percentage point makeup, but we will see some of that makeup.
I think the other important part, just to give a full perspective on this, the Tier 3, which will be starting in employees who begin after July 1st, 2017, who are not currently participants in the PSPRS system, have a 50-50 cost share. So currently, it's either 765 or 1165 that employees pay that are currently employed based upon the Hall. Everyone's paying 1165 right now, but some are gonna drop to 765. The new, and then the employer makes this other number right now, 34.5% and growing. In the new Tier 3, it's going to be a cost share with a 50-50 mix for the employee. It's gonna be 7.14% in the new actuarial for the employee and the employer. However, they threw in, to our surprise, a Tier 1 and Tier 2 legacy cost of, in this case, this year is a 15.1% or something like that. So hiring new employees in a tier 3 category is gonna cost us 23% in change to hire tier 3 employees. Going forward, there is that reform piece that we believe that will maintain a much lower trajectory, and that cost share piece will help balance some things out. There's some other percentages in there as well. I don't wanna get into all the details on we'll make a presentation on that another day, but so tier 3 employees in essence will cost us less money. They have a different set of rules and pluses and minuses in a tier 3 world. That 15%, I have not found anybody yet, including people that were authors of the framework for this pension reform, that have had that information, did not see it till like Thursday when this thing came out, and said, what's that? We never talked about this. So that, I mean, that's back to your question, Tim, is this gonna be it, or much as what they've helped us out, I'm skeptical at best that we're not gonna, hold to this number, and we're there is nothing we can do. I mean, there's things we can do at the local board level, the pension level and things like that we help control some of this stuff, but these big decisions and actuarials and all that stuff are out of our hands. And there's neighbors of ours that are at 91%. There's a police department in southern Arizona that's at 134%. Again, the average in the actuarial is 52%, and we're at 34.5 in next year. So to ask how we compare to others, we're doing good, but I'm not sure that's what you're really comparing to, other than the average. It is what it is.
Any other questions or comments? I want to thank you, gentlemen, for this great Christmas present you brought us today.
We're here to help.
That's what we do.
The gift that keeps on taking.
All right, Gabe, thank you for, not tongue-in-cheek, thank you for your report and work. Okay, Chief, staff report?
Okay, board staff report. Okay, looking at the call to response here, pulling up here, we had 322 responses. Looks like we're tracking everything across the board. Looks like our fires are up again, if you guys have been watching that, and I don't know if there's anything other, we've definitely had a couple fires this year, but I don't think it's anything out of the norm for the significant events that make that number. Gary, would you agree that's just a reporting issue? As it relates to everything else, we seem to be tracking fairly on pace. You can see we're actually down just a little bit for the call volume, so we're tracking a little bit behind year to date on total, but not really by much, so pretty much right on. Average response time for the year is just up by 6 seconds, and again, we think about that average response time as it relates to the amount of traffic we've had and all the different things that are going on right now. I mean, I almost wonder, when I start really thinking about it, we've had some significant traffic since last year even, and we've seen this trajectory of traffic problems. So trending up would be probably very much expected, in many ways. I mean, and adding Station 6 has probably lowered that in other ways. So if we didn't have the Station 6, I bet you'd see that number, being higher, and that's probably a good reason why. So, talk about the significant event on the Friday, the November 18th, about 10:45. We had a significant event in the canyon. We had a propane gas explosion at a resort in the north end of the canyon that resulted in an air ambulance ride for one of the employees there. We transported another occupant on scene that was there and present when the explosion occurred. We have been working with the owner of the facility and making sure that he's got everything he needs from us, and working with the county building department and everything. But fairly substantial event, and I would think that the building itself is probably at a loss, and they'll be demolishing that building, I would guess. Fire itself was fairly small and put out prior to arrival for the most part, but fairly significant. And, so that's that. Response by station, as you see there, is broken out. You see the grants updated there. We just updated a couple of the final numbers as we finished those grants. Last month, we were right as we were about to submit them, so we included them, but we finished up with final details, and those numbers are accurate now per Captain Ojeda, who finished up those grants. You'll notice we have a Type 3 engine that we requested, so we're hoping that we'll be able to help alleviate our budgetary concerns that we have here forthcoming. And and evaluate that with a grant funding of a Type 3 engine, which would help us greatly with a $305,000 expense. If we were able to get that, that would be a beautiful thing. And then a couple other pieces there, including some regional training and stuff like that. Community risk reduction, I would expect these numbers to have spiked since we've had John Davis on board now. Let's see, did they spike? No. We spent a lot of time really just in this transition right now as Gary's, we'll talk about towards the end of this thing with Gary retiring, as we all know. So a lot of energy's been put into this transition piece, but a lot of good stuff happening there. I've heard the plans continue to flow into there, which is a good sign of where things are at right now for the plan reviews for different occupancies and things like that. But good stuff happening there, as you can see. Training is pretty standard stuff. We did a multi-company drill out on I-17. We shut down the rest station right there in Rimrock. And did a pretty nice multi-agency event, and Ed was part of that. We brought in almost all the Verde Valley agencies.
Yeah, we had Verde Valley Ambulance, Copper Canyon, Verde Valley Fire, and ourselves.
And then we had Native Air or Guardian rather,
We
or
had Guardian Air, and then we also had Yapa County Emergency Management, DPS, and some sheriff's representation.
so we put together Mike Duran, our training officer, Ed Mazulis, and a couple other training folks all put together this pretty great training and kind of unique on the side of the road, and it worked out well, I think. A lot of stuff that they learned and worked on that. So good stuff. We hosted a UTV, recreational vehicle training certification, train the trainer class that Ed put on. Ed, do you want to share anything about that?
Yeah, basically, with our wildland medic program and some of our other responses, the Forest Service is going to require some sort of recognized training curriculum for the side-by-side operation. And it is a revenue generator. It is an opportunity to get our folks out of district and support the state's needs. But at the end of the day, we recognize that we have a lot of folks here that have never operated a UTV. And if the stats aren't lost on us, there's probably 50 of them that sit roadside right now in town that you can rent any day of the week. And we're running on quite a few UTV wrecks from public rentals. And being a public safety organization without a formal way to prepare our folks to operate UTVs, to rescue people that crash UTVs, seemed counterintuitive. So we decided to find a class and sponsor it. So now we've got 3 internal folks, 2 partner folks with Central Arizona Fire, and then 1 from Verde Valley Ambulance. And there'll be a training consortium that'll get all our folks trained up and in a recognized national program to keep our guys safer on the road on all 4 wheels.
And how many days was that class?
According to who you ask, it was 4 wonderful and/or miserable days in colder weather, driving around the forest and learning how to be safe.
So pretty intense. So again, that's the dedication we have for our folks, their safety and everything. And I thank you to Ed and all the folks that put that together. Last thing on training is we had Battalion Chief Cochran and Battalion Chief Lakowski attend our Blue Card command refresher training. So we committed to that through a grant years ago, and so we continue to foster that educational opportunity for our trainers, as well as indoctrinating that into our organization, and it continues to go well and help our folks really talk a common language when we're operating on the scene of a structure fire and even other all hazard emergencies. It's kind of evolving into. And anything else on that, Buzz, that you want to add? That I did? No. All right. That was it. All right.
It's a free training, I'll say it's free when you're an instructor, they give it to you perpetuity, you just have to show up. It's all part of your initial instructor trainer part, so it was part of that.
Which is nice. Not a lot's free anymore. And it's located in Phoenix, so it's for us. It's convenient.
So they get all the guys that everyone else wants, and you sit around just sort of at a 20-person round table and get to discuss things with them about latest tactics, latest issues.
It's good stuff. Some certifications out there as well. HR Manager Betty Johnson attended a class on disciplinary challenges in the fire service, and she once again continues to learn all the ins and outs of the fire service, and she's excited to tackle all those, right? And again, we did another train-the-trainer program for our folks, something called Nozzle Forward, which is kind of interesting. We sent our folks out, that was down south somewhere, or no, west, was it?
It's not New Mexico.
New Mexico?
And ultimately, that was an opportunity that popped up, and we assisted with some coverage, but it was a partnership with Yavapai College, and it's the members that weren't covered tuition-wise from Yavapai College paid out of pocket. So it was a great opportunity to catch some really solid training,
And that was,
low cost.
and that was about common technology, or terminology, and what else?
Just the essentials of nozzle work and fire attack, instead of just, to oversimplify it, just spraying water at stuff, the hydrology and the way it works and the way you can utilize your techniques to better ergonomics for folks so that they're not trying to struggle with the hose line by themselves and working together, and a lot of team tactics and things like that. It was just, our high-risk, low-frequency stuff on how to better handle our equipment to reduce injury and improve effectiveness.
So what's interesting to me is when I think about that stuff, most people just think there's a big red truck out there, and then we just, muscle off that hose, and we just, go through the house and put it out and break stuff and do whatever we do. And there's so much science and technology behind that, and it changes so much. I mean, it's like an annual basis now. You catch a class, and there's a new term for this, and a new science behind that, new study. They've been doing a lot of work. And so keeping on track with that and understanding this is really what we want to be focusing on. This was just a great article, but it doesn't really work that way. And so it's an investment in our folks. And so I commend the folks that went and those that went on their own accord. So thank you for that. Any questions on the chief's report so far? I got the special activities, upcoming things I can talk about next if there's no other questions. All right. Cottonwood Public Safety Dispatch Center, anything by on that? Continuing to work, going well, good stuff. Wildfire activity, we did have our folks out in North Carolina. We talked about that, I believe, last. They came back. We certainly saw some pretty amazing and devastating fires that occurred in Tennessee, North Carolina, Georgia, all that whole area that really saw some incredible fire behavior. And obviously the stuff that happened in Tennessee and the 14 fatalities that occurred in an environment there. And we really looked as an organization, at least on a high level, what are the lessons learned coming out of this thing in the first month or two? What can we learn from that? Some similarities in the types of folks that visit that type of area, not necessarily about the topography or the fuel type necessarily, but the communications that occurred. So we've had some of that dialogue with our folks, and so try to at least lessons learned from that. You may have heard as a sidebar that they did arrest a couple children, or juveniles anyway, for starting the fires and things like that. So that's the risk that we have on a daily basis in a community like this. Absolutely different fuel types, but I think a lot of the same comparisons. And so we can do it. We have to be doing everything we can to be safe and keep our folks protected, but that doesn't mean that we can make it 100%. We can only do as much as we can do. So we did get the report this morning about we're about $106,000 in net revenue to the district for wildland. We have a $55,000 line item budget there, so Gabe talked about that. So we've almost doubled our revenue expectations. It was a busy year, so. And then Chief Pichura is working hard to really right-size some of those needs from maintaining and managing our own needs here at home and balancing that with special responses to other areas and all kinds of stuff. So we got a lot of things moving in the wildland in the what we call the off-season, although they're still out working, which is odd. Workers' comp pool, we're still working with the group in the workers' comp pool and seeing what we can pull together in there. So we'll keep you posted. I was working on that just before the board meeting tonight and still trying to put together applications, numbers, and things like that. So excited for that if it does come to fruition. So we'll keep you posted. I had the opportunity to jump off a 415-foot building on Saturday. I survived. So we raised some money through Team Sedona, which was a Sedona Police Department, Jackie McQuaid, David Likens, the Sedona Oak Creek School District Superintendent, and myself. And we raised together over $66,000. I don't know, $6,300 or something like that. So thank you for those who donated that are present here today. And it was a great opportunity for Sedona Fire and us to work with our partnering agencies and help Special Olympics. So great stuff there, and it was pretty fun. Telecom 2 position status and firefighter testing status.
Testing. Briefly on the telecom tech position, we've received through today, 48 resumes. Most of them are not qualified in any way, shape, or form. There are a handful that have some skills or some experience that may be relevant. Those are at Bob, our soon-to-be telecom manager, for his review. So I'm waiting to hear back from him and just continuing to collect these. We did outsource to a number of online resources, telecom, Indeed.com, telecom careers, Indeed.com, Monster. It's showing up on a few other places. Chief saw it on Windward Jobs. Don't know how that came
Yeah,
about,
no
but
idea.
they tend to share their resumes. So that's where we are with that. Excuse me. Firefighter positions. The way we're doing the firefighter list this time, and I probably mentioned it, but it's very different from how we've done it in the past. We're using the National Testing Network, which is a resource where folks can go and be tested for firefighter-like jobs. And it's human relations, mechanics, reading, math, 4 different tests that they then combine into a scoring system, some pass-fail kind of scores. We received 173 people who have applied through that national testing network. They took the tests and said they were interested in working for Sedona Fire. From that 173, we narrowed the list down to 132 who actually passed all the parts. That was really good. Good numbers there. Of the 132, we drew a line at a combined score of 80 and said everybody who had a combined score of 80 or above, we're going to contact for them now to send in their credentials, their proof of certificates, licenses, and all that kind of thing. That's 88 people. So we went out to the 88 people last week, and I'm giving them till the 29th of December to provide their credentials to us, which we'll check through and create a list from that group that provides their credentials so that then we can schedule them for the practicals and the oral boards, right now planned to take place mid-February. Another change is that we are putting together, and this is Ed and the operations folks, some videos. We're going to test them on 4 practical parts of the job. And there's going to be a video for each one of those 4 parts that the candidates that we invite into the practicals will be able to view ahead of time before they show up. No surprises. So they will know how to pull the hose or whatever the different tasks, something to do with the ladders. They will know exactly what they're going to be tested on, what they're going to have to demonstrate. So I think that's pretty cool too. Another change is going to be the types of questions that we ask in the oral boards. We're going to gear those towards the Arbinger training that we've had and the outward mindset that we learned about month and a half ago. So we're really reconfiguring the whole process of finding the right people to be firefighters, because if they're going to come here, they're going to stick for 20, 25 years. We want the right person from the start so that they are productive and have a great career with us. Any questions on those 2 jobs? Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Chief, if I could just point out, I think we skipped the Fire Stats data program.
Oh, I'm trying to keep that for last because he's
Oh,
going to talk.
okay.
I gotta keep him waiting.
All right.
I'm going to get to it though because he's got it up
Okay.
on the board there. I'm going to get through my stuff. Actually, I'm going to give him 2 spots. So I'm getting to AFTA and then I'm going to give him the next 2. The AFTA, and thank you for reminding me because I did not notice that. So I'm just trying to look good. The AFTA conference reminder, just remember there is a conference in January. I believe we have a couple of you signed up for that conference. New board members are required to go to that. Mr. Attorney, what's the status on new board member or anyone who is elected, whether they've served, if they've already had the training, but they were reappointed, they have to reattend that training?
They do. We're trying to change that law, but until that law gets changed, you gotta repeat.
So I don't know if that affects, just the 2 of you are elected this time and the 2 of you are going, right? So that.
Well, can I ask a question about that?
Sure can.
Okay, I went through the training last January and completed it, so I have to go back through the training again this
Only when after you're reelected again, unless,
Okay, so I don't need to worry about it.
not right now,
Okay.
but in 2 years,
Next election cycle.
Okay.
you're up for election in 2 years, when are you up again?
4.
In 4, so you're good for 4 years, which is good news for you.
Well, wait a minute, he was appointed. He went through the training. Now he was just reelected.
Right, okay, I'm sorry. Yes, if you just got reelected, you have to complete that within a year of the election cycle.
So you can go to Laughlin or you can go to.
Congratulations.
Glendale.
You and me.
I was just gonna go gamble this time.
Table or type.
Well, yeah,
summer session doesn't necessarily
Yeah.
cover all the statutorily mandated training, so your best shot is Laughlin.
January.
So it's the same training that I went through?
Yes. The coursework has been modified slightly, but essentially it's the same training.
Some better instructors.
Yeah, some better looking instructors, for sure.
What are the options if you don't go to Laughlin? Is that the only,
No, there is an online training that is been placed online and is being worked on.
So it's
And,
not yet available?
It is, but they're tweaking it as we speak.
Okay, so is that an option for Dave and I if we wanted to do that instead of going back through the training at the conference?
Yes, yes. Short answer, yes. It's, I don't think as complete as the live training, but it'll suffice for statutory purposes.
There you go. 12 months to complete that upon election. So really, you would have till December of 2017.
Because, seriously, there's some really good sessions scheduled for January that I was hoping to attend, other than going through the mandatory training again, since I just did it less than a year ago.
Couldn't blame you for that. If you want the link, I'll send it to you.
Okay, that would be great.
There is a fee for that. Again, the district would cover that fee for that class as well. So just want to make sure you're aware of that, because it's, I don't know if it was intended to be that every time you got reelected, you have to go through the training, but that's the way it ended up getting written. And so I just want to make sure we were clear on that
Okay.
to you, and I
All right.
wasn't sure that we were, so.
And there's talk. I spoke with John about trying to change the statute for this coming legislative session. And if they do, they might make it retroactive to pull you in, but we don't know that yet.
So you may want to just hang tight, go to Laughlin, enjoy the classroom, and then gamble afterwards. And then if you have to, if it doesn't get fixed, then you may not need to take the classes in June or July or
Okay.
whatever, and that's okay. We just have to remember you have to get that in 12 months.
Okay.
It's a requirement, so we'll have Tricia put the
Well, thanks for the reminder
reminder.
on that.
So that's after, so please consider that. It's a great place to go in January. And with that, I'd like to turn over to fire stats and accreditation.
Good evening, board members. The data analysis tool that you approved a couple months ago finally showed up. We're next week, as a matter of fact, have next week, an orientation with the Paul Rotenberg, who's the principal in the firm, for our team to go through those programs. So here's a snapshot of what it does, and it's kind of blown up here. Let me pull it out a little bit. So here's what happens when you open it up. Please open up. It's a great tool. There we go. All right. So this is the front page that we get, and it starts with, on the left-hand column here, you can watch the cursor go down. We can select the date. So this one is pre-selected for 1 month's activity. We have data in the system that goes back to 2011. Understand that this data presentation reflects the data inputted by crews, by our RMS systems. Good or bad, it's the data represented in the collection process. So when we start looking at some of this information, and if you see the cursor all the way out here, for a response time of 45 minutes, it is all calls in this category that we have selected. I can break this down into, if you see the cursor here, this response piece, I can click call processing, and using the same data set, which, by the way, we can figure out how many pieces of data is in here. They're taking a look at 7,399 data pieces. And I can tell you what those are, but it's a culmination of a lot of vehicles moving at one time. It's not necessarily one vehicle per call. It's all the vehicles that are moving to all the incidents throughout the district in this picture.
But you can see on just call processing, there's an hour and 53-minute call processing piece way out here. And that just may be an outlier somewhere in the data set. So what's cool about this is it allows us to identify those elements and drill into it, find out what it is, and either code it correctly to the right response piece or scrub it because it's just a bad number. It was just inputted wrong. So what's nice about this system is I can go in and I can look at what it generally takes for an emergent call to be processed, no longer than, and this is a data set of seconds. So generally, if it's more than 5 minutes, it's probably a non-emergent call. So what I'm going to put in here is 300 seconds. And this is what the call processing piece looks like for this time period. And again, this is the entire year from year to date, January to November. And now I can start drilling down into the information as well. Jurisdiction, right now this has everything that we would go to in mutual aid. I can clean it out and just select Sedona. And it'll reset. And I can also drill into the call typing. Jurisdiction. There we go. So right now these are all calls. This is special duties. This is still alarms. This is transports from the ER to VVMC or up to Flagstaff. These are all calls. I can select specific calls. And as we talked last week, we want to start looking at what does it really take us in time to go to emergent calls. So let's look at EMS Delta calls. And in the last year, again, looking at data sets is important. There were 1,200 calls that were processed. But what I want to do also is look at how many units responded. And right now this says all. So if I had 4 units going to a medical, it's tracking all of that data on 4 units. I just want to look at the first unit to arrive on the scene. So I'm going to click 1. So in call processing, when we're starting to look at performance pieces as to how the system does, the data provided and the standards that we utilize in emergency services is a fractile measurement. So along the bottom here and along the side, we can look at how well we're performing 80% of the time, 70% of the time, or in the national standard piece, the measure is 90% of the time. So how are we doing it 90% of the time? Well, the number is 223 here, and this is year to date. And again, if I were to start looking at the data sets, I can pull into this bin, they call it. There's 5 calls that are at the 4-minute 4:35 threshold. I can click that and drill into this and find out what those calls are to figure out if they're anomalies, if they're miscoded, or if it really did take that long. But I can drill into the data set to find these things out.
So
Yes, ma'am.
Does that, I mean, that seems really good. Is that 2 minutes? Am I hearing this properly?
So
That's called
90% of the
call.
time, 2 minutes,
Yeah.
and so the national standard
Right.
for emergency medical response in the dispatch system that provides for that priority dispatching is, if I recall it, 1 minute and 30 seconds, 90% of the time. Is that right? Is it 2 minutes or is it 1 minute and 30? Minute and a half, 90% of the time. So they're close. And some of this stuff is relative to our classification of the information going into our RMS. Some of this may not be emergent Delta Echo level responses. So there's some data scrubbing and review
that we have to look at. But what's cool is that this tool gives us the ability to look into the data and really evaluate the performance of the system. Not only from the center sending the calls to our inputting, as well as coding the system. So it's really cool. It allows you to really look at what you're doing on a system relative to the inputs provided.
So if I could add, so if you wanted to look at this and say, hey, on the EMD side of this, let's select, we just selected deltas, but we could select all 4 EMS or 5 EMS criteria and look at that. Or we could try everything except EMS data. How long does it take to process all the other types of calls, except for EMS where they're not doing the EMD piece, and evaluate that? And how does that look? And then add the whole thing as an aggregate. And so how does it look when you add it all in, and look at those numbers and see. And I haven't played this, so I have no idea. Is it going to look better? Is it going to be worse? The numbers are the numbers, but you can start to look at it. And the nice part about it, Board Member Cooperman, is you can begin to take that bin and look at it and go, wow, what are those? And look at all 5 of those calls. They're all technical rescues that are trying to figure out where they're going in the middle of nowhere. That may not be, that's different. Or, wow, those are all people that have, cardiac events that are going on, that's time is critical. What's going on there? We have an issue. And it clearly can help us identify that quickly and easily.
So this one it captures all of the medical calls we go to now, and that call processing piece is right at 235, so it's plus.
But look at the
But
count
it's-
though, 3,200 units versus the 1,200 or whatever.
Right, so yes, the sample's a lot larger. The other piece is those lower level medical calls take longer to screen out, because we're really trying to say, is it really emergency? No? Okay, now we're gonna take a little bit more time to get the right units going at the right pace, whether it's lights and sirens or not. And the Alpha Charlie calls are code 2, or I'm sorry, code 1 without lights and sirens. The Bravo Delta Echoes are with lights and sirens. So it's cool to have the tool. The battalion chiefs and Tammy, Brian Espial, and some others will get some training on it. The site is available for these folks to go on and start drilling in the data. So it's not just one person holding the information. It's available for the entire management group to really start evaluating how we're doing.
And it's also exportable, correct, in a geo, what's the word?
So here's the map of all the medical calls, because we've selected medical calls. So zoom. And Tammy does a lot of this in her GIS piece, but this is kind of a snapshot of where the medicals, and again, this is all of the medical calls in the district that we have. And we also log outside the district medicals, so it's up the freeway, it's up the top, but here's the preponderance of this. Station 3 and 1 with a little hedge of 4 are the busiest sites. But what's nice is that these little hexagons you can drill down into and find out what's happening in this sphere there. You can also, draw a map. I don't want to do that one. I don't
Look at
want
that
his face
good-looking
either.
guy.
Uh-oh, Gary, this thing is just kind of, let go, let go, let go.
Well, Jeff's looking at that. I mean, what I think is interesting, this is, you saw how easy it is to click and drag and move, and the dashboard itself is not real flashy and exciting to me. It does everything you want it to do with simple clicks and check boxes and everything, and then it creates this data. That's exactly what we want to do and use, and so highly, highly valuable for us to be able to begin to use to not just get the data out, but try to figure out what's going on and things like that. So
it's going to be a great tool to play with and work through and evaluate. What allows us also in the next topic is the accreditation piece. Yeah. part of the elements that I was hired under was to look at accreditation for the organization, or at least engage at minimum the best practices of a fire agency. And one of the key elements and criteria is measuring what you do and evaluating what you do and coming up with adjustments or adaptations to the data to do a better job at how you perform given the information provided. This is one of the best tools that one could have, from the battalion chiefs looking at their crew performance to EMS program management, fire prevention services relative to brush fires in parts of the area, where do you need to target, and these sorts of things. So accreditation related, we are now an applicant registered agency. That was done last week. And what that does, it allows us to access pricing and training for folks to get the best practices, reference material, as well as the education to bring back into the district. Some have already gone to it. Some of it have to be refreshed because we're in new editions of the accreditation model. But at best, if the agency conforms to the elements of what a best practices agency does, you just accredit. It just makes that next logical step. I've given a checklist to our training division because we're going through our standard operating procedures list, and that's a few dozen to start with SOPs that are all critical to our updates on how we do our business in the field. And this checklist is about 4,200 items that a fire agency should be doing, and if not, why aren't you doing it? For instance, we don't do shipboard firefighting, so that's probably like 25 questions that we don't have to answer because we don't do shipboard firefighting. But it challenges you to, if you do these things, how do you get it done? And do you conform to the requirements of a best practices fire agency? So that list is started with that, and then with each SOP that goes out, it's going to have our performance indicator, which ties to how you measure your performance as an agency, listed on each of those. So we'll track that and measure that and make sure that we're updating them on a regular basis and we don't lose it. And if we're asked the question, should we go through the accreditation site visit, where's your SOPs, we can hand it to them, and they will see that we've taken these and aligned them with the critical criteria for a well-performing best practice agency. So that's the start of it, and people seem to be pretty engaged on it. There was some false starts in the past, and my goal is within the next year, have the self-assessment, which is like your internal review, done and completed, and to the fire chief for review. And then with our gap analysis of what we do, what we don't do, what we need to accomplish, we'll have a plan to move forward in addressing those gaps. And in registered status, you have up to 3 years, if you want to accredit, to move into the process to get it done.
How many accredited agencies are there currently
There are 254
in the world?
in the world.
So pretty, you know, and it's not it's a matter of measuring yourself to to another best practice thing. So it's don't have to do it like everyone else. We don't have to do it like, FDNY, who's not accredited, but I mean, you don't have to become that. You have to just benchmark that what you're doing is really what you say you're really doing, and that it meets these criterias. And it's really it's a great program. It's a lot of work. I'm glad we have 3 years to figure it out, but I think we decided to go this route because we need to be doing this, and we're never gonna find a time to. It's always the best. So now is better than later, and so we're jumping in.
Yes, sir.
I have a question, Mr. Chair. I was involved in accreditation for a couple other departments in years gone by, and I don't recall them using fire stats. What did they use back in the day before that came out?
Somebody banging their head against the wall with Excel. Yeah. And Excel was just giving you some percentile pieces, it wasn't showing you a lot of the data elements that this does. Vine Light was another tool that was out for a few years, and it went upside down.
What Northwest use when they did?
We had Vine Light. Yeah. What's nice about accreditation, it doesn't, as Chief Casey noted, it doesn't force you to become an NYFD or a Phoenix Fire or anyone else. It challenges you to evaluate who you are, what you do, and what your community needs and is willing to pay and support. So it's a really an internalization tool that forces you to think and evaluate how well you do stuff and what the community really desires and is willing to give to its emergency services. And part of the strategic planning elements is community insights, community inputs. And this, you just went through that, and it's got those insights in play. It needs to be refreshed periodically. But those are the key elements that allow you to drive towards making the good decisions at policy and operationally following those policy pieces. So that's accreditation.
It's fairly all-encompassing as well. There's work at your level, it's work at our level, it's the whole organization as a whole. It's not just how well can you pull the hose and put fires out. It's not that at all. It's everything from stem to stern. If you want to go back to shift for firefighting. Making Ed feel at home as a former Navy.
And it forces you annually to review everything. Well, it forces you annually to report. Best practices organizations live and thrive on the model continuously instead of having to deadline manage the system. And that's part of the pieces that we're trying to instill here, is that this is how we should be doing it year round, and we should be documenting it and moving it forward so that we're not running in the last 30 days to get our report in, and then in every 5 years when you have to have a site visit, run again to try and get things done. Central just went through this piece. They had a merger, or the fire authority piece with Chino. Good organizations would use the accreditation model to evaluate consolidations, mergers, fire authorities, to see how this thing fits. And if it doesn't quite fit yet, do those gap analysis, correct it, and then bring it in and stay accredited and run through it. I get that the fiscal crisis stripped out a lot of the will and some of the talent that was engaged to do these programs throughout the nation. But those agencies that stuck with accreditation and stayed with the whole premise throughout its entire thinking daily survived very well through the downturn. Their crisis were limited to very finite, focused areas. And it was a good package in modeling to not only community members, but also policy members as they moved through the seats, whether it was re-elections or new appointments. You had a package, you educated, and it allowed the agency to thrive versus react and spin down. So that's my accreditation.
I'm guessing as city manager, you may have dealt with some accreditation for the police departments, maybe. I'm not sure if any of the agencies you were accredited, but CLIA is a police agencies that may have been through that as a city manager, maybe not. I don't know again if any agencies were, but they have a model on the police side as well, and I'm excited about it. I came from an accredited agency. Jeff came from an accredited agency. It's a good program. It's a lot of work. What was the feedback what was the feedback from some folks when we kind of said, hey, we're in the pool? What were some of the comments you got from battalion chiefs or other folks that have crossed your path in a few days?
Most of them were cool. It's about time, and
Yeah.
thanks for bringing me this list. And now, oh dang, that list is long. I've forgotten how long it was. One of our captains who had gone through a lot of the training was a bit reticent when I asked him if he'd be willing to take it on, but then started thinking about it and said, yeah, I'm in. There's just so much value to it. It is a time suck if you think of it as a time suck. But if you take it to the other angle, which is it's going to make us better, it's going to make us more accountable and more responsible. I think there's some energy behind it, as well as a little bit of angst, because it is another big project, but it's a focused project, and that's how I'm going to try and steer it.
And one of the pieces is a community risk assessment piece, and it really requires you to really do this risk assessment and really kind of go, hey, here's everything that we're looking at and dealing with, and it formalizes that, even though we kind of know what that is, having that formal document, and as we get a new hotel or a new this, or, you know, you're updating that, and you're kind of like, whoa, this just changed, because all of a sudden you didn't realize these onesies and twosies that were coming in, now you've got this risk or whatever, so it's a great, great tool across the board. So, looking forward to that, and I thank Jeff for pushing us over. So it's great. Any questions for that? All right. APS utility easement. I included in your packet a request. Now remember, we talked a few months ago about a utility easement request from APS on the other side of the building. I kindly made a phone call to APS and left a message and said, please get a hold of me. I'd like to understand more about what you're doing and whatever. And all I received was this letter saying, hey, please sign here and give us this easement. It's easier. I've heard nothing back in a week. I don't know that your attitude has changed, but I think it's your position to tell me whether or not you'd like to give up an easement on this side of the building. The dynamics are slightly different on this side of the building than they were over there for the time being. I mean, on the other side of our property, we don't know what we're going to build, what we're going to do someday. It got some buildable. This part over here is not necessarily buildable. It's right on the other side of the building here. But I'm not really sure that I'm in a position to say that we should do that. And I leave it to you to tell me if you'd like me to sign the paperwork and give them that easement, or have them answer. So, I mean, at least phone us. They didn't even, just a letter we received. So I'm bringing it to you.
Do you have an opinion?
I'm basing my opinion on the last opinion you had, was why would we give them our land for free and limit ourselves? And, you know, there was discussion at some point in my mind. There was talk at some point the building next door was for sale, whenever that was, and we have a parking problem here, and so if we ever wanted to create parking is not for sale now or anything. But I'm saying, but in the future, if we wanted to have it does restrict us in some ways. It may be fine, the little strip they want. I would have liked to have heard from them and given me more intel on why this really needed to be done. Is it just convenient, or is it an absolute only way this can happen?
Well, I don't think it's fair for them to send us a note and say, sign here and give away your rights and don't return our phone calls. And I don't understand exactly what they want, even from what they sent.
That's why I called the gentleman and haven't got anything back. Maybe he's on vacation. I'm not, but we work well with APS in the past. I mean, they're a partner, stakeholder, group. But so my opinion is I don't have enough information, and I've reached out and haven't heard. So right now my answer would be no thanks. But the board can say no thanks and don't even bother, or no thanks until we hear any further. And if there's a better reason why we should, bring it back at a future date. I don't know if it's time sensitive. I don't know anything.
Well, I don't think we're trying to be bad neighbors. I just think that we deserve a better explanation than sign here and don't ask questions.
Correct. If you remember the last one we did on the other side, it was, hey, listen, if we have to go all the way around, if we could just cut through here, it'd just be a lot easier and quicker for us. And they provided some information to us, and then we made a decision. Well, you still have an option to go around. It's just a little bit cumbersome for you. Yeah, we're not going to give up those things. If it was, this is the only way, or this isn't going to happen, or that's going to happen, or as Jeff said to me, is there a benefit to us, or what's the reason for us to do this? None of which has occurred. So I'm happy if you as a board give me consensus at this point. There's not an interest in giving up that easement unless there's a mutual benefit or an absolute have to do, and it's the only way. What's that?
At least better communication of what they're doing, why they're doing it, what it will look like, how it impacts us, what it is.
Yeah, there's a drawing there.
It's a map with a line
Yeah.
on it.
So,
I would agree with that.
and Tim, you may have some experience in some of these easement things. Are we out of bounds, or would they just give up that property or whatever?
Well, my feeling is that we should say no until they provide better justification for it to the board, to the district. And I know that when you go to APS and ask for easement, they're not easy to work with. So I from my perspective, we just don't sign something they send us. We make them explain in more detail exactly what it is they want and why, and how does it affect the district. So that'd be my 2 cents worth.
I'm happy with that, and I thank you
I
for the
would agree
direction.
with Tim on that whole thing. It's, what currently is there right now?
It's just,
No wall, no. any
there's
improvements
stairs
on
there.
it?
Again, I don't know in reference, I didn't go out with a surveyor and kind of go, where this exactly is at. It's over here on this side of the building, and I'm trying to orient myself to that map, which is not even like a full plot. It's, if you look at the road kind of cuts in, then it's gone. And so I think it's over here. That's the best I can do. There's a stairway going up, and that's really it. There's a fence, I think between the two properties too, or a half wall or something like that.
Wall.
Yeah, so, you
I
know,
think Bill would probably tell us, don't sign anything until you know what you're signing.
well, yeah, I definitely wasn't gonna sign anything. It makes it easier for me to say the board's not willing to go, kind of what Tim just said, and I can echo that, just say, yeah, give us some more intel and return
Ask
some
for a
phone
better
calls.
explanation.
And, how's it work? So I'm good with that, and I thank you for the direction. I just received it like the day before the packet went out, so anyway, okay, great. Any other questions or action?
We good?
We're
Okay.
good.
Oak Creek, real quick, we've met, I was up at a nice meeting up in Flagstaff till 11:55, so we're on the pace to get done well before then at this meeting. They approved a cell tower at Julie Lane, which is right off Thompson, for a cell carrier. It's probably the third meeting I went to get to a yes vote for the conditional use permit. There's a tower that was just put up yesterday, I believe, right across from Junipine, 130 or 40 or 50-foot tower there. We've been working with the providers to try to see where we can co-locate on and provide communications improvements. Some we want to be in those areas, some we don't have a need based upon our coverage map, but we're working hard, and I would say it's challenging to work in some cases with those folks or get to the right people engineering wise and things like that. So we're doing our best to try to improve our communications. We have some significant communication gaps in the canyon, and so we're working on that to do our best. Did I summarize that good enough, Jeff? So we're on it. We're doing our work, but it's challenging. Good news, we're trying to get some improved communications in the canyon so we can provide access to 911 and code red notifications as they relate to emergency notifications through the county. So that part's good, but we still have radio communications for the district to be able to improve or need to be improved. Major League Bridge project, you probably read or have seen. I haven't actually gone through the bridge yet myself, but they are out there working on it at night. They're working through, I think, the 23rd or something like that. If they don't finish it, they'll come back sometime after the first of the year or something like that. But they got to be doing pretty good, I would imagine, out there getting that fencing up. So that's some of the hard work you guys did here to get that to happen in conjunction with the city and others. And then last is Traffic Matters movement. So I provided a letter to the Oak Creek Homeowners Association, I think it may be called, who's kind of heading up this Traffic Matters, and they're just trying to work with ADOT to deal with traffic issues as it relates to the canyon. And as a fire district, we certainly don't have the ability or interest to tell ADOT how to engineer or move roads or move traffic per se, but we do certainly have concerns about traffic for our emergency response capabilities. And so we provided a kind of a moment to that group who's running this program, if you will, to the right legislators and ADOT to address traffic issues, and that we do have concerns. We send units into the canyon, and they try to get back into town for a transport or just to get back because they handled the call. It can be an hour to get back. Buzz?
We used to time it in just the DC rig because it was, we had the flexibility, and it got old timing it. We quit tracking it because it would take an hour from Station 5 easily. It was taking an hour from Station 6 into town too, on weekends.
So in Station 6 capacity, we can move through the traffic a bit on that. They get over on that bike lane, and we can kind of squeeze by sometimes. It's slow going, all for sure, but we can kind of get by there. In the canyon with the curves and the roads, we have a very difficult time navigating southbound or west, whatever that is there, coming into uptown from the canyon. So going up isn't super bad as far as traffic goes, but coming back, we certainly have problems. Or Station 5 coming in on an emergency response on certain days is incredibly, taxing on our ability to respond and maintain services. So, we work on weekends and busy weekends, I should say, holidays, things like that we know about. We'll up staff and do some things with a rig to help facilitate, so we don't lose a fire truck to an hour time delay, because they can't just turn our lights on and come back into town if there's an emergency like we can everywhere else. We may get stuck in traffic. Because you put the lights on in those cases, there's nowhere for cars to go. There's blind curves, there's all kinds of stuff. So it's a very unique and tricky situation. So I want to let you know, hey, we voiced our opinion with this group that hey, there is a need or a concern by us. There's things being addressed. Solutions, that's a whole different story. So we're doing our best to keep our mission critical stuff on the radar. Any questions on that? Last is thank you cards. I'm not going to go through them. I think you can read them. If there's any questions about the thank you cards, we're continuing to do great stuff as we always do. And some really cute and pretty cards folks have sent us and said thanks. So I will, in the interest of time, move on.
All right. Thanks, Chief. And I'm coming, who's
Betty's going to talk about Station 5 right now.
Okay, Station 5.
Well, as you know, we had our fire on October 27th. Captain Fleece was burned at that time, but he's doing much better, so I'm glad to be able to report that. Working with the insurance company, the contractor, the service providers to get things restored. There are a number of expenses, as you might expect, and I tried to outline those for you in the board agenda communication. What we're asking for is your approval to allow us to pay expenses up to a ceiling of $65,000. We're not quite there yet, but between the contractor and some of the internal expenses, the service master expense, and some others, it will probably push $60,000. Right now, what we're hearing from our insurance company is all of that will be reimbursed except for the deductible. We do have replacement costs, so that amount for depreciation that shows on the bottom of the first page of the communication, that will come back to us, as well as all the other expenses, the estimates, whatever the actual costs are going to end up being. It's still developing. I'm still getting communications this week about some additional things, some purchases folks have had to make or will need to make. For instance, today I heard about a storage cabinet that we need to rent to put on property, so when the contractor is able to come in, we can move all of our personal stuff out, put it in the storage facility for a few weeks while the contractor does the work that he needs to do. So our request is for you to approve up to the ceiling of $65,000, the outflow of cash to pay the expenses, knowing that all but the $500 will be coming back in.
Board, the way we operate in this case is that it becomes a project code, and it gets brought in and expended, and that's how it works. And we have a vendor we're working with for the quotes and the repairs. We're working with our insurance company, maximizing anything we can get done. And there's the discrepancy piece that Betty began to talk about.
But the insurance company's not
insurance-
worried about that. They're going to pay it.
So it's a process. Though. They say, hey, we're going to fix this, and the guys, wait a second, they only gave you 20 linear feet. It's 30 linear feet that's
Yeah.
siding or whatever. So we have to.
That's
It's a
normal.
lengthy process. October 27th to November or December 6th, 14th today. And then we're hoping that we'll start after the first of the year is when they'll
Or
begin.
maybe sooner. Yeah.
Maybe sooner.
I need to get his estimate. We don't have, because they're still finding some things. I'll get that estimate.
We may have a need to actually evacuate the facility for a couple days or weeks or whatever that is. And so Chief Pachura is working on some either alternate sites or moving folks wherever we need to be, keeping them available. And we have a couple different options. So I don't know if we have any more definitive on that yet, but our goal is to impact response as least as possible.
The initial plan is to work with the Oak Creek Canyon folks to locate somewhere. Our concern being winter is freeze on the equipment being stored outside. So we're kind of working through some options and timing and like with the contractor and members of the community up there. The daytime response would have, at minimum, the engine crew up there hanging out and doing their thing, and potentially housing at Station 4 for the night. That's the least desirable package, but the best one would be to locate somewhere up in the canyon. Estimates are anywhere from 7 to 10 days, maybe, if everything, when they pull everything off to do the work, from painting to flooring to the walls that need to be taken care of. there's a time set that things have to set for a while to cure before you close it all up. So, we're gonna look at maybe a 2-week window that will be dislocated from the facility.
Okay. I don't have any problem with the motion, with the concept. The motion, however, the last sentence says additional costs not covered by insurance will be taken from contingency. I'm not okay with authorizing contingency funds in a blanket statement after the 65,000.
So, there are some pieces that we found during review of the building, like the sprinkler system not having the right stuff on it, the hardware, and extending the sprinkler system to the entryway where fire occurred, are some pieces that we think we can handle out of budget and facilities. They're not a big ad because the ceilings are already down, the plumber's already gonna be there. They do some stuff. So we're thinking most of that will be handled out of budget. Anything that's attributable to the incident itself is covered by the insurance, sans the deductible. We've already been prepaid 30-some odd thousand.
33,000
So we
plus,
have
yeah.
that check already cash in play.
118.
I'm not looking at asking for any contingency at this time.
So we can strike that sentence. I'm not saying we wouldn't, obviously, we
Correct.
wouldn't go to contingency to, I just don't, until we know the cost and what it is that it needs, I don't know that we would wanna authorize it blanket.
Understood.
That was good. We tried.
Sneaky, aren't you?
Gabe told me to do it.
All right, well, since I had the problem with it, I'll make the motion. I move to approve authorization for staff to complete the repairs for Station 5 as they arise, not to exceed $65,000.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Obviously, we'll make it right. If we have to come back and talk about it again, we will. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, power, okay. Just Ed?
This is Edward.
All right, as a segue, we partnered with My ID bracelets. It's a medical bracelet. I spoke with about these before. All but sold out, and I was waiting for them to get their updated product. I'll pass this around to look at. They're available at the front desk. It's a one-size-fits-all, and it's a medical ID bracelet. You scan QR code, and it gives you the basic patient information. And we're providing them to our CIP patients if they would like them, and to offset the cost of providing them to the CIP patients, we've got them available at the front desk for a price. And like I said, first batch was about 10 of them, and we're already sold out of them, except for 2 that were extra small, so they don't work. But it's a pretty neat product, and it's not on the agenda, so I'll answer questions offline in the interest of time.
Wait, I have one question.
Okay.
Can anybody access what's on there by using a QR viewer?
The PIN code is, you have to flip the bracelet and scan it with a QR.
But any QR reader?
Any QR reader. So if you're unconscious, unresponsive, yes, your stuff could get technically stolen.
Because,
But
I mean, as you know, you wear a diabetes bracelet, it says diabetes on it. So
Yeah.
if they-
yeah, exactly. Aiden wears one. And so you scan with a QR, his picture pops up. This is Aiden. Here's his dad and mom's number. He's a type 1 diabetic on Novolog. His glucagon pen is usually located in his backpack. It's that kind of thing. And then there's no paperwork to carry around. It's not a fancy bracelet that has a little diabetic stamp on it. It gives you everything on there. But
What you choose to put on there, really,
yeah,
it's
whatever
you
you
control
want.
it.
Right, I was just wondering about HIPAA. Do you have to have a special reader to get to it?
No,
or can anybody
that's the
look at it?
free product. If you want, and we haven't done much with this, you can pay a fee, of course. You know, everything's got a fee if you want, and you can have up-to-date medical records auto attached to it or attached to it. So if you're in a situation where you have some comorbidities and a complex medical history, you can work with your providers to have updates regularly. And there's talking about legislation for DNRs electronic versions of DNRs to be acceptable, because right now we have to have the physical paper to cease. And so they're talking about a lot of stuff as this technology rolls out. But reception's been great in town. People are digging it, and it's sporty. It's not this clanky piece of jewelry that, you know, and you can do anything in them and they don't break or wear out. So, but yeah, they're available. I know one of the board members was asking about them, so they're here finally.
Thank you.
On to the agenda item. I spent a lot of time tonight talking about personnel costs. Well, it's one of my big concerns indirectly. I'm always looking at safer, faster, better ways for us to provide our service. And being responsible for EMS, it's over 80% of what we do. At the beginning of this year, as you know, we bought the 2 new ambulances, and it had the power load system installed to augment the gurneys that we purchased. And of course, the vendor and partnering agency said they're a great tool. We had never had them installed in our apparatus. And, you know, a lot of third-party information stated that creates a safer work environment, less back injuries, less stress lifting, so on and so forth. In addition to that, at the time and continuing on today, it's one of the only rated devices for the new NFPA standards for rollover protection for our patients and crews when they're in the back of the ambulance if it rolls. So it's kind of the decision points to refresh your memory. Going forward, to keep it simple, the guys that don't have power loads now are like, when do we get our power loads? This thing is awesome. You know, we didn't know what we didn't know. The floor loves the tool. It's a safe tool. We've had no accidental drops of gurneys with it. The locking mechanisms have been flawless. We haven't had any maintenance or downtime issues with them, which was all questions we had because other agencies had issues. They've been a great success. And so looking at moving forward, we don't have a refurb scheduled for a bit. And to like size our fleet, there's 4 first out ambulances, and this proposal is to purchase 2 power loads. When making this decision, my boss and my boss's boss said, yeah, where's the money coming from? And some of the numbers you see in this proposal are exactly that. One, the manufacturer had an opportunity to do a 0% financing option. Secondly, we looked at some of the work comp stats on injuries this year to date related to moving patients around. And all these numbers aren't directly related to gurney movement of patients, but just in general, our philosophy of making things better and safer for the movement of patients. You see those numbers in there approaching $50,000 for injuries and lost time for those injuries. And in addition to that, I looked at ambulance revenue, what we had budgeted for the year at October 30th, 33% of the year. We'd collected 49% of our budgeted revenue for ambulance billing. And the thought process is if there is an opportunity to power load these apparatus up at the same time and sooner than later, it'll like size our fleet and get us equipped with safer apparatus for rollover protection, like I said. Ultimately, these devices will be requested and or integrated into a refurbished ambulance for approval down the road, and or I'd bring it back for as a budget item if so approved down the road. But that's kind of the background behind it and why it's not we didn't plan to buy these initially, and it was not we had an oversight, let's try to pull it out of contingency. This was just basically, hey, the things are working really good. The crews really like them. They're safer for our highway speeds, and it's a good product. So that's where this proposal comes from, and I'll open it to questions if there are any.
Well, it's obvious that it improves the safety factor, decreases injury, and that seems very important.
Ed, are these 2 ambulances we're looking at, these are not ones that are on the docket for a refurbishment in the near future?
I'm not gonna predict near future, Chief, right now, seeing we just got a $6,000 surprise this week. What I can say is with this install, we have a third-party manufacturer that would do the install, and with it, you'll replace the flooring and install this device. Flooring is one of the things that gets mucked up requiring refurb, other than the chassis itself. So I'm not gonna say for certain, but with these newer model year ambulances, we've had much less problems with the chassis, and we might be able to extend those refurb dates. But ultimately, these do apply to our first out ambulances, and all of our current first out ambulances are positioned to be refurb vehicles down the road.
Absolutely, but we're not going to be refurbing one of these ambulances we want to put in next year when the cost we could hold off until the refurbishment? I guess I'm trying to ask that
No,
question.
there absolutely is a potential one of these vehicles we're speaking of will go to refurb. However, then that cost will just
Okay.
be added to the
That's the
refurb.
one.
So, yeah,
That's the second part of that
So we have
question.
two in service right now.
yes,
We have 5 first out ambulances right
four.
now? 4. So there's 2 running out of here, so,
Two ambulances run out of here. One has power load, one does not.
and so the second out from here
It's
is a
reserve.
So truly, we're running 4, not 5.
We
Running.
we have 4 staff.
3, 6, 4, and 1.
Yes.
Okay.
We have 2 at 3.
The 4 staff. We have 4 staff ambulances, and we all have a total of 7, 3 in reserve status.
Right, we have an
So
extra.
we're talking about putting these in 4 first outs and not
Yes.
in 3. Okay.
No, purely first out.
What's I know we did the extended warranty on the other ones, but remind me what it is. How, and it's expensive, but I mean, how long does that get you?
7 years,
Okay.
and it's everything. And again, I was bitten by our last gurney manufacturer, and the customer service was difficult, to say the least. And we've had a couple manufacturer recommended upgrades, and then a couple very, very minor non-operationally impacting issues with our gurneys, and the customer service has been next day. It's been pretty amazing. But not a single problem with the power load.
So financing this. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say
Yeah,
that,
talk about money.
the financing is 0% as long as we pay it off in a 3-year term.
Mm-hmm.
That's really good.
And so the tell me this, the payments were 14,000, but the amount is 60. So we're gonna pay 23 down, and it's 14 a year for 3 years. The math doesn't work.
2 years.
2 years.
38, 42, 20, 62. Okay.
Yeah.
So 23 is our first payment,
And that includes the install price. That's the additional.
and then 2 more payments of 14.
Mm-hmm.
Next payment due in the fall, or 1 year from now.
Well, payment will be due on receipt of goods, so spring timeframe.
So if you approve it tonight, we'll maybe see it in April,
Write a
and
check
then it'll be
in April.
April of
Okay. just
17.
Make
that
sure
we
it's
would-
all
in
it's
April
all
of
separate
18.
fiscal years. Okay. Well, I like 0%.
And board, you know, I think Battalion Chief, or Division Chief Mazulis talked about it. I mean, we understand that this is it's a safety issue. And we worked a lot to get even to the new cots. When I got here, it was like, hey, we have these cots, we love them, and they were a different manufacturer, but they all hated them, but they loved them. And we switched to Stryker power load cots, or power load? Yeah, power load cots.
The cot is the Power Pro.
Power Pro.
The loading system is the Power Load.
So, that was a change, and they're like, let's do it, and they've loved the cots, and then we transitioned into the 2 new ambulances with the power load, and they love it, and I'm not surprised, but I mean, it was definitely, you know, they turned out they loved it, and it's just, that's why we're here for today, because it's really been successful. Now the folks are like, why don't we have this in our ambulances? We want to be safe like the others, and we didn't know what we didn't know, as Ed said, and so we bring it to you before you because of the safety factor and the opportunity to extend our 0% that we've already got engaged with them. And
Having loaded people into ambulances before, personally, you have my attention. What's the weight limit?
750.
Whoa.
And we tried it. We extended it. It is 750.
Yeah, don't tell us anything. Okay.
I'll make the motion. Yeah. I move to approve purchase order 10610 for the purchase and financing of 2 new Stryker power load systems for 2 of the fire district's ambulances at a cost of $60,924.29 with the use of Stryker financing of 0% interest for a 3-year term, and furthermore authorize the use of contingency funds for the amount of $23,800.95 to provide for acquisition and installation in the spring of 2017.
I will second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, I definitely agree with your thoughts on saving work comp, because backs go out with 700-pound patients.
Well, the only injury we've had with gurney-related loading this year was a non-power loaded gurney, and it's anecdotal at best, but, the only drops we've had this year were with non-power loaded units, and the data's out there, and it's proven. So thank you.
Thank you for taking care of the safety of our folks, and we appreciate that. We'll work on getting those installed quickly.
All right. Shared Services Committee?
Since our last meeting, we haven't had any organized meeting whatsoever. That's not to say that things have not gone on behind the scenes between the chiefs, and I'd kind of like to hear if there was any further discussions with our
Yes.
fire marshal issue.
Yes, there was more discussion on the fire marshal issue. One very brief discussion with Copper Canyon based upon the PSPRS issue. I did approach Chief Keller and just say, hey, now that we've got this other little thing in our back of our minds, you know, does it make any more sense after the stuff we proposed? And you know, that is what it is. But I just kind of nudged to see if it would, you know, prompt him to consider bringing it forward to his board again as another cost-saving measure. Maybe even to the point that we may need to re-identify, here's what we planned if everything was going well. Maybe we need to recoil even and say, we talk about hiring an additional inspector and things to balance the workload and help us, but maybe we need to do that to even just maintain what we have, you know, and so that's all it went, and that's just been the last couple of days. I did meet with Verde Valley Fire District just to talk and see if there was an interest in them with a similar type model. So we're looking at some pricing with them, but there's not there's an interest by them to really get their feet on the ground as it relates to their new organizational structure and having did the consolidation with Clarkdale, that they kind of want to have some time under their belts. So we're at the point that we're going to need to figure out what we're doing and go from there. So as we, you know, talk about Fire Marshal Johnson retiring and our plans with Deputy Fire Marshal Davis, and we want to expand our fire prevention, as we've talked about in our meetings, since there's definitely a need. We may need to be looking at all the other things that are in front of us now, prioritize and look at all these things and decide what we come up with. So we're doing our best. So we're opening the doors where we can. We're kicking the tires where we can. We had a great chiefs meeting that talked about shared services in a holistic fashion. There was a lot of progress just in teamwork and good stuff. But at this point, there's no other real movement that we're involved in, and I can't speak of other folks either that there's any other movement. But I strongly believe in it. We'll continue. But you'll all get a memo if something really moves. If the earth starts to shake, I'll let you know. So,
Thank you.
Okay.
That's it.
Thanks, Dave. All right, Gary.
hey, before we get to Gary, I got a few things I want to say, because this is Gary's last message. Oh, I forgot the Toys for Tots. We got this cool little thing too. That was in my report. But Toys for Tots, we made a really great program in Toys for Tots. A lot of donations. Gary's going to talk about that. But anyway, I got a cool, suitable for framing certificate right here. But I just want to say a few things about Gary, because this is his last board meeting. So we practiced. I showed him some videos on YouTube on how to drop the mic. So he's going to have his swan song here, and then he's going to be hopefully got something really good planned, Gary, for tonight, because I want to see you drop the mic. You know, Gary was hired here in 1978 as a firefighter, just a young wee lad at that point, I suppose, right? From 1978 to 85, he moved up through the ranks as a firefighter to engineer to captain, got his EMT. In 1985, he was then selected to be the battalion chief for the volunteer services, where he then rode that position from 85 to 91. In 1991, he was the volunteer deputy chief. And held that role for another 4 years. And then in 1995, he said, wow, this is pretty cool, but I could get hired here full-time. And so he became a fire inspector in 1995. Remained there in that position for a while, took over PIO duties back in 1999. In 2000, became a senior fire inspector. 2008, became the deputy fire marshal. In 2011, was promoted to fire marshal. And here on January 5th, he'll be retiring 2017. What is that, a total of 39 years, 39 years. I have to tell you, Employee of the Year in 2005, Customer Service Award in 2008, recognition for the slide fire in 2014. I can tell you that I get plenty of phone calls. We were at lunch today and just hearing some of the nice things that Gary's done for different businesses in our community, and really created a nice welcome, the introduction to Sedona Fire in many cases. He's at the front line. The firefighters get there when bad stuff's happening. Gary's trying to prevent that from happening in the group in CRM. And when I hear these people call and tell us how great Gary is to work with, how accommodating he is, how he makes sure this gets done, or he understands the complexities of whatever's happening in their business at that time that's really critical to them. Might be mundane or routine for us, but they really need that attention right now. Gary provides that. And I can't tell you, as the chief, to know that the front line out there in the business community is being handled just as well as the front line that these guys do in the emergency operations. That's a well-balanced machine. So that's awesome, and I really appreciate that, Gary. To think back of the community in 39 years of dedicated service, the history that we have when we talk about things in the organization, I've got a few go-to people, and it's Tricia, it was Sandy. Sandy's now retired. I sent her a message the other day on something. She sent me a picture of a beach and said, "Don't bother me." And she was at the beach, literally. So, Gary, I expect the same if I text you. Send me a picture of the beach. Just go on wherever and grab it. You don't have to really be there. But we truly wish you the best. It's been an amazing almost 5 years for me to be working with you. I know we've worked hard. We've progressed a ton in 5 years. We've done a lot, I believe, in 5 years, and I'm really proud of everything we've done. And so I'm sad to see this day come. I'm sad for your last meeting. We'll have a formal walkout on January 5th, 3 o'clock. You have a beautiful flyer with a nice mugshot of Gary. Hope to see some of you there, and certainly invite all the public who may be watching this meeting to join us and say thanks. But me personally, I want to say thank you, Gary, for a job well done, and professionalizing or continuing to professionalize and elevate our status as a community risk management division, and your dedication to this community is amazing. We're going to miss you. You're on my speed dial still. Don't worry. I'm not change your number. I'll find it.
No, it's still, it works.
So with that, I do turn it over to Gary for his final safety message and anything else you'd like to share with us, and drop the mic, buddy.
I wanted to point this out. Admin folks put this together. Right, Trish?
Jody.
And so this was great because, like the chief said, got involved in Toys for Tots. So it was another way to kind of send that message and tie it in. And when I saw this, I thought that was great. I can tell you it wasn't my idea, but it was still great. And so, Trish, I think that was really great. My message is kind of simple this year, and that is it's Christmas, so did you buy your smoke alarm or your seal alarm, or did you buy batteries for it? One of the downsides we have is that we don't get reminded with turn the clocks and that. But, so sometimes we have a tendency to forget. I'm guilty of that. At my house, and the way we kind of deal with it is the wife pays the bills off of a calendar, and we just put on the calendar something to do. So just as a reminder. So, and I want to leave you with this. We had a CO call that at first didn't sound like a CO call. Brian Ford responded over onto Adante, and they had 8 people were in this home. 7 of them were transported. Turns out that it's cold. A lot of these furnaces are running nonstop, especially some of the older furnaces in the old homes. And fortunately, the outcome was positive. The mother went and got 2 kids that had already gone to school. They got transported to VVMC and then down to Phoenix Children's Hospital. The outcome could have been totally worse. And so just as a reminder, if your home has got something in that produces CO, natural gas, wood burning fireplace, I can't stress enough, get a CO alarm. It could very well make the difference. And with that, have a good holiday, and thank you.
Congratulations. We'll see you at the big walkout, but
You got 2 more weeks, 3 more weeks, I want to slap you.
4 Fridays.
But who's counting? Gary, from the board, I want to say thank you for your service. Wish you the best in retirement.
Appreciate it.
On that happier note, somebody gets to retire, that's a happy note.
Yep.
All right, we're adjourned, thank you.
Hey, Ed, can I buy it off of you?
Oh, that's right. Do we have stuff to